Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture, and it's Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. So this was a weird week. A pretty busy one, to be sure, and some things did turn out as I had predicted, but overall, well, it's not often you can say that our new arrivals span between K-pop, Lil Baby, Kevin Gates, and the Backstreet Boys. Yeah, we'll be getting to that one. I did not see that coming at all. And it's very telling of the Hot 100 in general right now, because there doesn't seem to be any one larger musical movement that's driving the pop culture conversation with any sort of sustainability beyond just a lot of trap music. And we're ripe to see everything blow apart. And you don't believe me? Let's start off with the top 10, where, as I predicted last week, Nice for What by Drake regained the number one, and it's easily one of the weakest number ones we've had in some time. No big radio or streaming momentum, the sales have crashed. The only reason it has the top spot right now is because This Is America by Childish Gambino just could not hold the top with only streaming and good sales, especially unseated where it was on YouTube, and with the radio being extremely slow to get on board. I mean, it's still at number 2 above God's Plan by Drake at number 3, but really that song is only here because it's got momentum on YouTube and the radio, and even that in the latter category is bleeding away. Now that does make it vulnerable to Psycho by Post Malone featuring Ty Dolla $ign at number 4. Sales on YouTube are pretty good, the radio likes the song, but it also might have peaked in streaming too early to get much higher on the charts. And you could argue that The Middle by Zedd, Maren Morris, and Gray is poised to move in, going up to number 5 with really good sales this week, but without significant streaming and a peak on the radio this week, it's gonna probably stall out, especially in the face of our first new top 10 entry, yes indeed, by Lil Baby and Drake at number 6, which has suddenly become a streaming monster with literally nothing else to take it at this point. Now, granted, some of its gain has to be attributed to the collapse of Meant to Be by Bebe Rexha featuring Florida Georgia Line at number 7, where the radio and the sales are bleeding hard and it doesn't have any streaming. And that means it's vulnerable to a serious challenge from our second new top 10 entry, Booed Up by LMA. Now, if we're looking for a song that actually has some sustainability, it's this one. Streaming is good, especially on YouTube, and radio seems surprisingly robust, which means that if the sales pick up, it definitely has some top 5 potential. Hell, it rose past No Tears Left to Cry by Ariana Grande down to number 9, which might have that radio and sales traction, but not enough on streaming to be a bigger contender right now, especially as the YouTube seems to ebb away. And finally, the entry that will inevitably get the most conversation a lot later on the show, Fake Love by BTS at number 10. The first time a K-pop band has debuted in the top 10, it got there on absolutely huge sales and a ton of streaming, a credit to the band's diehard American fan base, although the larger question will be how long it lasts, especially considering the radio's not going to pick it up, but more on that later. In the meantime, though, we did have our losers and dropouts, most of which you probably could have seen coming. Yeah, I'm not happy that we lost both Say Something by Justin Timberlake and Chris Stapleton and Stir Fry by Amigos, but the latter got enough points to make the year-end list, and the former might well be pretty close to getting there anyway. Also, When We by Tank exited, somehow getting a respectable 20 weeks while never breaking the top 70. Never would have expected that song to even last that long. Now, for our losers, man, it was not good if you were relying on streaming for your chart position, because it was a bloodbath for hip-hop. First, we had the expected losses for Post Malone. Rich and Sad down to 65, Paranoid to 66, Spoil My Night with Sway Lee to 77, Stay to 88, but you know what? J. Cole also took some major hits, with ATM hitting 89, and Kevin's Heart breaking down to 92. Then we had the continued collapse of Watch by Travis Scott, Lil Uzi Vert, and Kanye West to 60. As I said, I called it from last week, but it was a bad week for Lil Uzi Vert all around, as Shuda with Playboy Cardi fell off the debut to 67. And the rest, they're all over the place. Power Glide by Ray Shrimmer and Juicy J went to 41, Japan by Famous Dex fell to 52, Outside Today by Young Boy Never Broke Again went to 97, Every Day by Logic and Marshmello dropped to 91, and Gucci Flip Flops by Bad Baby featuring Lil Yachty utterly fell off at 96. Hell, the only non-hip-hop song to take a serious loss here was No Excuses by Meghan Trainor, a song that I quite literally forgot existed. And the strange thing is that I can't really see much rhyme or reason behind what's going to replace it on the Hot 100. I already mentioned Yes Indeed gaining off the debut last week, just wonderful. But in the same mold, we also had the boost boost for Juice WRLD and Lucid Dreams surging up to 35, and All Girls Are the Same up to 53. Just friggin' fantastic. And when you consider that Alone by Halsey, Big Sean, and Stefflon Don went up to 70, and Overdose by Youngboy Never Broke Again shot up to 42, you would think the Hot 100 is just plugging in the gas with more mediocrity, but thankfully we do have some quality coming up the charts. For the First Time by Darius Rucker had a good radio week, so it's up to 58, and it's generally inoffensive. Love Lies by Khalid and Normani somehow got another boost of life up to 36. It's actually got more consistent strength across the board than you would otherwise expect. And we have Mercy by Brett Young continuing up to 71. This could wind up being pretty big just from country radio alone. I would keep an eye on this, and I kind of hope it does well. It's a good song. But with no returning entries, we need to focus more on our new arrivals. Starting off with number 99, Don't Go Breaking My Heart by the Backstreet Boys. Okay, look, I'm a Backstreet Boys fan. I have been for decades now. I've seen them live twice since when they were huge. In terms of sheer vocal talent, the group has persisted when so many other boy bands and boy band survivors have failed. And thus, it kind of breaks my heart to say that I'm not really a fan of this song. The harmonies are underwhelming, especially in the lower register. The choice to be so reliant on falsetto doesn't exactly flatter the entire group. The production is very percussion heavy and leans into these blocky minor synths that don't quite have the sweep or groove they could, especially in comparison with their previous work. The lyrics feel very by the numbers, and there's absolutely no reason for there to be auto-tune on the bridge of the song. If anything, that bothers me the most on principle. You're a boy band that made your name off of the great vocal arrangements. You don't need auto-tune at this point in your career. So yeah, I guess I'll give a little bit of applause for getting a song in the Hot 100 20 years into your career, but no, I'm not really a fan of this one. I will say I'd likely take it over number 98, Downtown's Dead by Sam Hunt.
Girls walk by and friends say hi, but Friday night it might as well be just another Tuesday night without you. As long as you're still in my head, there ain't no way that I can paint a ghost town red. Downtown's dead.
Well, took him long enough, and indeed, presuming Sam Hunt even still wants to make his brand of overly polished pop country, he might have waited a little bit too long to step in. The sales crashed pretty hard after this came out this week, and while for some ungodly reason he's still getting country radio pickups, he's got some stiffer competition these days from some of his peers, and that's only a good thing. But still, why country radio is bothering to give this attention at all is mystifying, from the fake drums, the oddly flaccid vocal layering, and with these weird warbling fragments warping across an empty mix, possibly representative of the ghost of the ex that Sam Hunt just can't get over. And then if you're like me, you realize that Jake Owen did this concept eons better 5 years ago with Ghost Town, and forget this lumbering clumsiness with a really abortive chorus and just forget it ever existed. Next, number 86, Champion by Nav featuring Travis Scott.
And fucking her like she nameless, cause the last two was too famous. We got that trophy like a champion. Fell asleep right on the jet, we gone. Big range just like a champion. No TSA, hop on a jet, we gone.
Honest question. Who the hell even likes Nav? Seriously, I'm from Canada. I'm living in Toronto right now, and I'd handily take even someone like Tory Lanez over him. But apparently he's friends with Travis Scott, and that netted him enough of a presence to show up here. And really, this is more of a Travis Scott more than anything else that Nav brings to the table, which is 2 lines on the chorus and 1 verse. And even with that, he references flying in a basic girl from Alaska who has braces, and yet can't have too many Instagram followers. And considering that Travis Scott fills his hook with very similar references, you have to wonder how fragile these guys' egos are that they can't handle a woman who has her own clout and presence possibly even eclipsing theirs. Now, granted, he's worried about lean getting stuck in his teeth with Travis Scott, so I'm not even that surprised there. And the frustrating thing is that I didn't really mind the production at first, the pianos, the off-kilter vibe, but then we get the increasingly overmixed wave of squawking synths and trap skitters that feels way too dense to cultivate any sort of significant atmosphere. In other words, no, this is pretty bad. I can't get into it. It just feels tacky in a really unappealing way. Not a good song. Next, number 84, Welcome to the Party by Diplo, French Montana, and Lil Pump featuring Zhavia
Welcome to the party. Welcome to the party. Welcome to the party. Welcome to the party.
This is one of those songs where you see the list of artists attached and you just have a real sinking feeling going in. It's just going to be a total mess. And then you realize this was a song attached to Deadpool 2, and you find yourself wondering why the hell Celine Dion's song didn't chart. It was better than this. Anyway, this is a song relying on the lyrical skills of French Montana and Lil Pump, with fragments from Zhavia that sound fine enough. I wouldn't mind having more of her. Although, how anything can get past the blaring synth line that barely moves off of two notes that almost kind of reminds me of a little of a tone from Yeezus, it's beyond me. But yeah, surprising nobody, French Montana has absolutely nothing interesting to say. So the majority of the focus is on Lil Pump, and look, I'm still not really much of a fan of his brand of obnoxiousness and how he has his grandmother moving crack, but by the time he's talking about making a girl do jumping jacks, I know we're dealing with 2 Chainz borderline parody material here. And even then, Lil Pump is still not as naturally charismatic. But still, the part of me that unironically likes Pound the Alarm by Nicki Minaj from 6 years ago, I kind of got into the synth line. There is something of a hook here I like. I mean, it's far from great or all that interesting, but for this sort of heavy headbanging party vibe, I can tolerate it. Not bad. Number 83, Sangria Wine by Pharrell and Camila Cabello.
So awesome how she moves her body. She do the sangria wine, move side to side, front and behind. Sangria wine, do the sangria wine.
So let me start by saying that I'm not really sure what Camila Cabello is doing in terms of her single rollout in her career. Sure, Havana was huge, and Never Be the Same was pretty big. So why now hop on a duet with Pharrell where nearly all the buzz I've heard is really negative? I mean, the buzz isn't wrong. The abusive echo on the verses is ridiculous and does nothing to cover up how underwritten they feel. And Pharrell trying to make the Sangria Wine a dance move might not count among the worst of his lyrics, but it's certainly up there. Especially when you have right after that hook a pitch down Camila Cabello saying turbo sauce. No, I'm not kidding about that, it's hilarious. Or how for no reason she keeps switching in between third person and first person in her lines, so there's no coherence surrounding who the hell she's even talking about, if it is even herself. And the frustrating thing is that with the lush horn mix and slightly off-kilter guitar line playing off the textured percussion, it's clear that Pharrell still has some good taste when it comes to production, and even then it feels like the melody's a lot wonkier than it should be. So yeah, this is utterly absurd and almost impressively stupid, and nowhere close to how sexy as it thinks it is, and yet I get the disturbing feeling that it'll hit the sweet spot of being catchy and just idiotic enough to stick around. Right now, radio's not on board, but considering how bad this is, it might just get picked up. Otherwise, skip it. Number 82, Let It Sing by Kevin Gates.
You don't trust a nigga, I don't trust the way they raise. Yappa going, bada boom, yappa going, bada bing. Ray Charles, I can't see Aretha Franklin, let it sing. Yappa going, bada boom, yappa going, bada bing. Ray Charles, I can't see Aretha Franklin, let it sing.
So it looks like Kevin Gates took some time off after his career hit a bit of a speed bump in late 2016. I'd like to think it's because he wanted the story of him screwing his cousin for a few years to blow over, but it turns out he's been in prison on gun charges. But hey, he got parole in January of this year, and now he's got 2 new songs hitting the Hot 100 this week. And look, I remember a time when I used to like Kevin Gates for his solid melodic tendencies and a lot of natural charisma and personality, and even though he's apologizing for not being turned up enough on the outro, I think he delivers pretty damn well here, especially considering the melodrama that he's trying to work with. That sense of unstable tension does a lot to justify how Kevin Gates loses control midway through the first verse in the face of a woman trying to ply him for cash. That sounds like he needs that cash to rebuild his life. I mean, he can't have it out in front of the children after all. Seriously, he uses that line, it's also kind of funny. Even if by the end of the song, he's then pushing his dick into her kidney. But then when you pair with the bassy rumble, the production that gradually builds more unstable, glossy layers against that trap beat, okay, look, I cannot call this a great song, but unlike so many of the acts in trap these days, Kevin Gates has a personality, and he can flow pretty well, and that certainly helps in comparison to, say, I don't know, number 80, Life Goes On by Lil Baby featuring Gunna and Lil Uzi Vert.
I'm like, baby, I know I'm wrong, but this just how life goes. And I know these niggas be happy if I let you go. Got me walking on a thin line on my
the first of 2 Lil Baby songs heading the Hot 100 this week. Thanks, Drake, for propping this guy up. And look, I don't deny that he's got a better flow here than on other songs, but his super nasal flow and all the talk of walking on his tippy toes and all the same shallow flexing and whoring out your girl just gets tedious for me, especially when against this very desaturated piano and trap beat. Or to put it another way, it's a bad sign when Lil Uzi Vert's auto-tune caterwauling brings the most actual charisma to the song. Sure, the hook is marginally catchy despite everything, and Lil Baby does benefit from Gunna showing up and being utterly forgettable, but really, I can't see myself remembering a lot of his verse on this song either, so next. Number 79, Southside by Lil Baby.
Long live Troop, my OG man, that nigga from the Southside. Shout out DZ and them lows who creepin' on the Southside. I get bazzin' for the low and send them to the Southside. Yeah, I'm selling coke for real. I put a D in dough for real. Send the run on my coat for real. That Draco. I'm with the Reds and Claygo. Shout out to Clay, that nigga a real one. We had them bands in the neighborhood.
Okay, I had the hope this song might have had some potential. The hook was repetitive and rhymed a lot of words with themselves, but some of the flows on the verses, they sounded pretty decent. Presuming, of course, you heard them in isolated fragments and completely ignored the lack of any real transitions and the utterly incompetent flow switches on those verses. And while I get how he might think this is tedious otherwise, the content is utterly formulaic luxury drug rap flexing, the production has no real melody against the swampy bass and trap beat, I get why somebody might call this boring, but without any solid transitions or any shift in this content in between flows, every single flow shift comes across as really damn stilted and awkward. So no, while this might have potential, the execution on a lot of this is utterly botched. Number 73, Like That by Kris Wu.
Got me spending all my cash like that. Keep on doing what I like that. Girl, like that. Tell me if you took a chance like that. Got me spending all my cash like that. Keep on doing what I like that.
Okay, you're gonna have to follow me on this one. If you don't know, Kris Wu is a Chinese-Canadian singer, songwriter, actor, model who actually has been in some sizably big Chinese blockbusters, but he was also a member of the K-pop group EXO, and he's used that to build up a solo career, notching some soundtrack hits on his movies and a collaboration with Travis Scott last year that went pretty well, with this now being his big charting stateside breakthrough. And honestly, I'm pretty underwhelmed, as it seems like any presence he actually brings to the microphone is driven by such gratuitous T-Pain-esque auto-tune, especially against the rubbery bass beat, very muted keys, and a desaturated mix that owes a lot more to Zayn than any K-pop I've heard recently. And I'm not sure that the content really helps him here, where it's so clear the girl isn't really all that into him, so he just keeps throwing money at her to get her to stick around. And yeah, by the second verse it implies a little bit more intimacy, but it's utterly crippled by a lack of any organic presence from him. So I guess if you're into sexy Chinese robots into minimalist R&B, I guess you might like this, but no, not for me. Next, number 68, Change Lanes by Kevin Gates.
Rolex, no diamonds in it. Swiss moving, no time for ticking. Introverted, not trying to kick it. Private life, please mind your business. Introverted these days. Introverted these days. Plain Jane, not in chain lanes. Plain Jane, not in chain lanes. Plain Jane, not in change lanes. Plain Jane, not in change lanes.
And now we got more Kevin Gates. This time speaking more on his time in prison and now how he's flexing that he's out. And honestly, I keep trying to like this guy and he's not making it easy on me. The watery melody and oily trap groove don't really help him, especially against the vocal production where he stays pretty low-key throughout the entire song, but he does sketch out a pretty bleak picture surrounding his conviction and prison time on the first verse, although he doesn't tell much of a story, which highlights the big problem with Change Lanes. Kevin Gates cannot stay on topic. He starts the verse praising God, and considering how often he references his conversion to Islam on the song, you'd think that would make for an interesting angle, until we get the formless flexing, a string of references to fast food, and his plan to screw a Kardashian despite him actually being married with kids. And while I kind of like his flow, any attempts at introspection are really damn shallow, and a lack of greater energy does not help him here. I mean, it's not really bad, but not quite a good song here either. And finally, number 10, Fake Love by BTS. And here's the big one. BTS's big breakthrough single tied to their first album to go #1 on the Billboard 200. An album stuffed with breakup songs, and one that I'm genuinely surprised that nobody has added to my schedule on Patreon as of yet. And considering how bad this week has been, I was really hoping this could click as a big hit for me, and yet I can't really say it does. Mostly because, like most K-pop, it feels like a pileup of genres. In this case, fusing a lot of hip-hop triplet flows to R&B vocals that can't help but feel a lot flatter and more compressed than they should be, especially when they switch to English against a buried guitar lead for a shouty hook that would not be far removed from a lot of emo music. And again, this sort of K-pop plays in melodrama. I get that, and I'm not against this in principle, but there's this lingering sourness in the lyrics that juxtaposes an awkward away from the much more sweeter sung vocals, especially when the frustrated anger clashes with a lot of the insecurity at the core. So yeah, you could argue it kind of pulls off that conflict at the core of the song and projecting emotions to preserve some sort of relationship that are not your own, but the production really lets down the better performances at the core. There doesn't need to be this much compression on the vocals. This should have a lot more body and weight to the song than it does for me. Again, it's not bad, but really it should be better. Sorry to say it, but wow, this week was not good. Almost to the point where I'm not even sure I could give an honorable mention, but you know what, I think I'll give it to Kevin Gates for Let It Sing, with the best of the week going to Diplo, French Montana, Lil Pump, and Zhavia Award for Welcome to the Party. Oh my god. Jesus, there's a lot of bad songs here. But I think it has to go to Sangria Wine by Pharrell and Camila Cabello for being the most embarrassing and borderline hilarious misfire here. That song is just a train wreck. Dishonourable mention going to Champion by Nav and Travis Scott. Just an ugly song without any of the charisma or content to really justify it. Next up, well, Drake and Pusha T will likely show up the most, especially as A$AP Rocky's success seems to be sputtering out in Spotify right now, but hey, we'll see. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.